All right, look, I've helped so many people make the move to Utah. I take this really seriously. I absolutely love guiding people in making that move to my home state here in Utah. But this video is going to outline the 15 things that you must know if you yourself are considering making that move. And no, not everything about living in Utah is perfect or rosy. In fact, there are pros and cons to no matter where you live, and that's no different here in the state of Utah. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 15 things that you must know if you're considering making that move yourself, whether they be good or whether they be bad. And with that said, let's get started. All right, first and foremost, it's no surprise, Utah is world-class when it comes to outdoor recreation, scenic beauty, the beautiful landscapes that we get to enjoy each and every day. And if you're considering making that move to Utah yourself, you'd probably be well served to pay a visit to Utah if you haven't already, and go check out some of these absolutely breathtaking places that we get to see each and every day, or at least when we go on short road trips around the state of Utah. Utah ranks as one of the most beautiful states in the nation, alongside states like California and Hawaii, but Utah's landscape is so diverse and so unique that you get to see so many different places throughout the state of Utah, and to be honest with you, some of those places are absolutely unworldly. For example, you've got the Bonneville Salt Flats, just west of Salt Lake City, that is a place that if you haven't visited yet, you should, because it is absolutely amazing. There are also places down in central and southern Utah that will take your breath away just as much, with a completely unique and different landscape itself. And for most people visiting Utah, they visit the national parks, and the most visited national park in the state of Utah is Zion National Park, which is near St. George in the southwest corner of the state. But we have a total of 5 national parks here in Utah, along with many other national recreation areas. And so no matter where you live in the state of Utah, nature at its finest is right here in our backyard. And when I say that, I also include people who live along the Wasatch Front, because the majority of Utahns do live along the Wasatch Front, either in the Salt Lake City metropolitan area or in neighboring metropolitan areas up north in Ogden or just to the south of us in Provo. And regardless of where you live along the Wasatch Front, you're likely within 15 to 30 minutes of being right inside of the Wasatch Mountains, with lush green mountains that are just beautiful, with lakes and trails and world-class outdoor activities, including mountain biking and, of course, skiing and snowboarding and all of the winter sports that Utah provides. Needless to say, whether you're hiking Bryce Canyon National Park in southern Utah, or you're exploring the Aspen Grove just outside of Provo up in Sundance, it doesn't matter what your flavor is, there are so many cool places to take advantage of, and you have to know this before you make the move yourself, because when you do come, you should absolutely take advantage of what Utah truly has to provide. All right, the next thing that you need to know about making the move to Utah is the weather and the climate variability. The climate here varies greatly. In fact, you'll notice I'm wearing a hoodie today, which is funny because this is the first day of the season that I've had to dress warm, because we've had unseasonably warm weather up until just yesterday. And with this really cool, crisp autumn air, it feels so good. October is my favorite time of year. Despite the fact that the weather is changing and winter is on its way, it just provides something so incredibly beautiful. When you look up into those mountains and you see the clouds hovering right in the midst of those mountains, and the leaves have changed colors, and everything just looks so beautiful. But for other people, including my wife, who is from Southern California, she just doesn't love the cold. I love the cool, crisp air. She does not. She thinks that Southern California has the best weather on the planet, and I probably couldn't disagree. However, in Utah, we get that variability that just comes. In other words, whether it be the fall or the spring seasons, we can get very bipolar weather in terms of it can't quite decide if it's winter or if it's still summer. In fact, just a couple of days ago, we had high temperatures up in the upper 80s, and it was quite hot. And now we're here with really cool autumn weather. And so if you're prepared for a place where you get to experience all 4 seasons, both with nice hot summers and colder winters, including an autumn and a spring season in between, you really get to experience everything in the state of Utah, but it does change on a dime. And also, it's worth noting that Utah does have a semi-arid to arid climate. In other words, we don't have much humidity in the air, and that helps in the wintertime because it won't feel as cold as it will anywhere else because we are so dry. But that also helps us in the summertime as well. A 90-degree or 100-degree weather day in the summertime won't feel as hot here as it will somewhere where it's more humid. And so the lack of humidity in the air really does help soften the blow in terms of our weather. But with that drier air does come other challenges. Things tend to dry out more, including your hands, your face, your hair. So you do have to make sure that you're aware of that. But this overarching discussion about weather and the patterns and the variability that we get to experience here, it's not for everybody, to be honest with you. Some people don't love it. For me personally, I absolutely love it. But I can assure you that it will take a little bit of adjustment if you aren't from a place with similar weather. All right, the next thing you need to know when making the move to Utah is pretty high in elevation. And no, it's not as high as Denver, the mile-high city, but it's not far off either. In fact, Utah's capital city in Salt Lake City sits just north of 4,200 feet elevation. But throughout the entire Wasatch Front, you'll find places that are slightly higher than that. And if you drive just 15 minutes up into the mountains, up into the Park City area or Heber or other mountain towns along the Wasatch back, you will notice that you're probably going to be a couple thousand feet higher in elevation. So what does that mean if you're not from a place like Utah? Well, for those that come here and travel here, they might experience some altitude sickness, especially if you're choosing to fly into the city and immediately get up into the outdoors and go on a high alpine hike. If you're up higher in those mountains and you haven't allowed your body to acclimate, you're certainly going to feel out of breath and you're certainly going to feel perhaps a little bit of altitude sickness. But if you are making the move here, it only takes an average person anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks for their body to completely acclimate to the altitude here. And so it's really not a big concern long term. It's more of a concern if you're just flying in to experience the outdoors and then you're flying out. But if you're moving here, just know for those first few weeks, you might feel a little different, but your body, I assure you, will acclimate. All right, the next thing you must know when making the move to Utah is the cost of living. This is a really popular topic. In fact, so many people that are reaching out to me every single day are asking me specifics centered around the conversation of what is the cost of living in Utah. Now, in Utah, the cost of living is pretty decent in most regards other than real estate. Our home prices have skyrocketed. They have shot up in value. Now, depending on where you're coming from, if you're coming from a place like Southern California or perhaps Denver or other cities that are a little bit bigger, you'll probably see a little bit of relief in some regard. You might find homes that are less expensive. And even if you're coming from places like Arizona or even some places in Texas, you might find that the total cost of living is actually less than the place that you're coming from. I have clients moving here each and every day. They're coming from California, New Jersey, New York, Michigan, Florida, Texas, Arizona, Idaho. They're coming from all over the place and they're coming from other countries as well. And the topic of cost of living is really personal depending on your situation and where you're moving to, and I love sharing that data with people so that they know what to expect. For example, if you're moving from Texas, you're going to see much lower property taxes here. And if you're coming from states like California, New York, or New Jersey, you're pretty much going to save money in all regards. It just depends on what your goals are, and that's where the cost of living really comes into play. You will notice that the cost of living in many areas of your daily life are less here than where you're coming from, but overall, across the board, across the country, costs have risen. This inflation that we battled for the last couple of years has really affected every American in every state, in every city. So really, that is no different than people here in Utah. And so we're feeling the pain here just like everywhere else in terms of inflation. But moving forward, I'm hoping that we're past that and the overall cost of living in Utah, excluding real estate, sits around the middle of the pack. But the best way for me to really dial in the cost of living differences based on where you're coming from is to hop on a call with me. I can really guide you through that. All right, the next thing you must know is that Utah does have a booming job market. Now, there are certain opportunities in certain industries that are really thriving here. Industries such as healthcare, financial services, aerospace defense, and advanced manufacturing are really booming here. The tech scene here is strong as well, and the Silicon Slopes effect of what has attracted so many companies to the state of Utah, specifically from the state of California, has brought with it an highly educated workforce, and they've also tapped into Utah's local population and we have a talented and skilled population here as well. So that is the backbone of our economy here in Utah, which ranks #1 in the nation. And with more and more major companies making the move to Utah or choosing to start up here in Utah, we see the future for Utah being very bright. If you're making that move and you're looking for new opportunities, whether that be starting your own business or getting a new job here, you're probably better off here in Utah than most every other state that people are coming from. And all in all, I really hope that Utah's economy and booming job market continues and remains strong and keeps Utah at the top of the rankings for the foreseeable future. I really feel optimistic about what is happening in Utah, not only with the growth that we're experiencing, but why we're growing. And the reasons why we're growing is the secret sauce as to why people choose to make the move here to begin with. And speaking of one of those reasons why Utah is growing so quickly is my next point, the next thing you must know when making the move to Utah, and that is that Utah is incredibly family-centric. And these family-oriented values that are at the core and the foundation of the state of Utah are precisely the reason why not only people, but companies are choosing to make their headquarters here and make their home here, because those values do attract people that are more stable. They attract people that are consistent, that are good employees, that are good at their job, that want to progress. And that is at the core the essence of what makes Utah special. And so with these family-centered values that are at the root of the culture here in Utah, it really spreads itself throughout the entire culture, not just within our homes, but also in our businesses and in our communities in every regard. Utah is one of the greatest states in the country to raise a family. I do so myself with my 2 small children, and hopefully anyone that moves here with a family themselves or the hope and dream of starting a family find it to be just as special as I do. All right, and that leads me to the next point, and that is religion and culture. Now, religion and politics are 2 of the things that we typically don't want to talk about too much because they can be controversial topics, but I don't shy away from that whatsoever. Utah's values are rooted in the LDS faith, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or as many people call them, the Mormons. And it's no surprise that Utah was greatly made up by people that called themselves members of this faith. And up until the last handful of years, the members of that faith have made up the majority of the population in Utah. Those days are gone. Utah has far outgrown other states, and because of that, members of the faith now account for 42% of the state as opposed to the majority. So life is changing in Utah, but the values that are instilled, and that includes the family values that we just talked about, but the values instill themselves throughout our culture. Now, some of those things are good and some of those things are maybe a little bad, depending on where you're coming from and what your experience is specifically. Now, I will add that no matter what faith you belong to, you're going to find a good place here. There are many faiths here. It's not just members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There are so many different faiths that really do well here in Utah because we do have those family values. And that stretches itself through any faith. Or if you're of no faith at all, you're likely going to find a great home here as well. There are certain areas where you're going to probably not fit in as much as others. I personally cannot talk about those areas as a real estate agent and broker because I cannot steer you from one neighborhood to another based on religion. But what I can share with you is Utah is evolving and changing rapidly. And personally, I really love that. Also, a question that I get a lot in my comments or when I get on video calls with people, especially people with kids, they're curious how they're going to fit into the community and are their kids going to fit in if indeed their other friends at school are members of that faith and they can't really see themselves fitting in with their families and playing with those friends. That is a very valid concern, and a lot of people have experienced that in the past. Far fewer people experience it today, but it still does happen. So whenever I get on a video call with people, I can really dial in your specifics and make sure that I'm understanding your concerns, your questions, to make sure that I can give you the best possible advice and guidance. All right, the next thing you must know is everything about education. Education here in Utah is really important. In fact, Utah leads the nation for the largest percentage of its budget going towards education. You'll also notice that the rankings that Utah provides for education, both with elementary, secondary, and higher education, it ranks incredibly high, and it ranks really high in every regard because education is so important for people here in Utah and people of this culture. But there's a caveat. We do have more babies in Utah than any any other state in the country, and because of that, we do see larger class sizes. So it's not uncommon to see class sizes that have 21, 22, or 23 children in a classroom as opposed to 17 or 16 perhaps. And for that reason alone, it does pull the rankings down just a bit, but it still ranks really high in the country, and certain schools that happen to be the best schools in the state really do excel, and there are a lot of different educational opportunities regardless of where you're coming from in the state of Utah. We have so much flexibility and freedom to choose where and how we educate our children, whether that be public schools, private schools, charter or magnet schools, or even homeschooling. There are so many options here, and it's one of a handful of states in the country that provides the most freedom to its citizens to educate their children how they so choose. And on the topic of higher education, we also have a number of really good quality universities, including the University of Utah, Brigham Young University, Utah Valley University, and Utah State, as well as others throughout the state of Utah. So education here is incredibly important, and it's a great place to come if education is important to you. And so often when people are reaching out to me and we get on a call with each other, the parents are so concerned about their children's education. Those are things that I take really seriously, so I can share the proper resources that will help you know exactly where you might want to land based on education. It's a hot topic. Reach out to me if you have questions. All right, moving on. The next thing you must know is that Utah does have funny alcohol laws. Utah has some of the strictest alcohol laws in the country. Although they have loosened in recent years and they've become much more normal, we still do have stricter laws here in the state of Utah. In fact, alcohol sales, excluding beer, has to be done through state-run liquor stores. And there are regulations as to how and where alcohol can be consumed. Now, these state-run liquor stores are everywhere now. There are beautiful, nice new stores going up all the time, but in the past, it was more difficult. So it does take a little preparation, a little planning, because you can't just run to the corner market, the corner liquor store, and buy what you want at any hour of the day. You're going to have to plan ahead. And beyond that, if you're eating out at a restaurant and you're choosing to purchase an alcoholic beverage, you also do have to consume food along with the beverage, which to some people that are coming from other places, it might feel a little funny. I promise you, you will get used to it. And for those that live here, they have their workarounds. They know what to do. They know how to plan ahead a little bit, and they know how to manage what it is they're looking for. Now, personally, I don't place much value on alcohol, period, but I understand it's a major component to people's social gatherings, their family gatherings. And so you might want to know exactly what those laws are, but it's also fair to say that Utah does have lower blood alcohol levels in terms of driving as well. And I personally like that because I like to know that my roads are a little safer in terms of drunk drivers. So alcohol laws are something worth adjusting towards. If it's important to you, you'll want to know what those laws are and you'll want to be prepared. All right, next up, the next thing you must know is what is traffic like and what is the public transportation system like? The cool thing about traffic in Utah and in Salt Lake City specifically is it ranks much better than most every other major American city. In fact, the average commute time here in Salt Lake City in the metropolitan area is just 22 minutes. In other major cities like Denver, it's significantly higher. And if you go down to Las Vegas or Phoenix or Houston, Dallas, Los Angeles, etc., those cities are much longer commute times. So here in Utah, we get to take advantage of better traffic. I do also talk to a lot of locals who have lived here their entire life, and they complain that traffic has gotten significantly worse. I would argue that it has gotten worse in phases, but as the infrastructure adapts and the roads widen, it actually has gotten better in many areas that were worse before. So there's a constant changing evolution to our transportation problems here, and I think that we've done an incredibly good job for the most part, not everywhere, but for the most part in terms of managing the growth in terms of traffic. On the flip side of that, if you're not looking to drive everywhere and you're looking to take advantage of public transportation, the Salt Lake City metropolitan area ranks as the second best city in the entire country when it comes to public transportation. And that extends well beyond just a bus system or a train. It extends all the way through the Salt Lake Valley in the form of a really cool light rail system called TRAC. Now, the TRAC system was first developed and planned for when Salt Lake City was awarded the 2002 Winter Olympics, and now that the 2034 Olympics have been granted to Salt Lake City, it might actually mean that the light rail system here and the public transportation system as a whole may just be improved upon that much more. Regardless, it's the second best city in the country, second to only Portland in that regard. So public transportation, if you live in the Salt Salt Lake City metropolitan area is great. If you're living anywhere but Salt Lake City, if you're living up north in the Ogden metro, or south in the Provo metro, or in St. George or Logan, you don't have the same options, and the public transportation in those areas are significantly less. All right, next up, I want to touch on one of my major concerns, and that is air quality. Because of the geography where our population resides, right along the west side of the Rocky Mountains, we do see that air get trapped right here in the valleys, and because of that, the air quality can really suffer. I've talked about this on countless videos right here on my channel. If you want to know more, just watch more of the videos here, but it really boils down to those winter inversions in the wintertime that typically hit us for about 2 weeks per year. And then we also can get wildfire smoke that really sets in if we have wildfires burning in California, Nevada, Idaho, or even up in the Northwest. We see those wildfires burning in the late summertime, and oftentimes it fills our valleys up with smoke. And because of those factors, the air quality here can suffer. We do have some days of the year where we have some of the worst air in the country and in the world, and it's worth noting. And if you plan ahead like I do and make sure that you plan a vacation in February or even January perhaps, you're likely going to realize a really nice retreat from the air quality here. Or if you just simply get up in those mountains, go skiing, go snowboarding, go up to Park City, go up in the mountains in any regard, you're going to get out of that nasty air in the wintertime. And it's something that I would encourage anyone to take advantage of, because the air up there, 2,000 feet higher in elevation, is perfectly crisp and clean, while down here in the valley in the wintertime, when we have those inversions, can be a drag. And when those inversions really set in, it almost feels like your throat's a little itchy, a little burning sensation, and your eyes might feel it as well. You really kind of feel like you're almost starting to get sick, but you really aren't. For that reason alone, it's my #1 negative about living in the state of Utah, and it really affects us for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks per year, sometimes more depending on the year. Now, I won't say that every year is great or every year is bad, but that's the average number that we're going to see that bad air throughout the year. All right, next up, let's talk the housing market. It's my favorite topic as a real estate broker and agent myself. This is something that I'm really passionate about, and making sure that I educate each and every client, whether that be in purchasing a new construction home or an existing home. Regardless, Utah is a great place to move to, and we see that in the numbers, as Utah has been the fastest growing state in the nation since 2010. And because of that growth, Utah leads the nation in building the most homes per capita than any state in the country. So new construction plays a vital role in our housing market, including everything that comes with that. So as a real estate professional, it's my job to make sure that I can offer proper guidance and clarity in purchasing new construction and guiding you through those contracts, as well as purchasing existing. And that's precisely why I've built a real estate team behind me, to make sure that I can serve my clients at the highest possible level. So if the housing market is something you're interested in, the best thing to do is either get in touch with me or click that link on my channel at my website, and you can sign up and receive notifications for listings that are on the market, because my website is synced with the MLS every 5 minutes. And better yet, you'll be able to see what's popping up on the market, and you'll get a good feel for what you get for the money. So go ahead and sign up for that, or reach out to me and I can help you, guide you through the process as well. Regardless, the housing market here in Utah, although it is competitive, it can be expensive in many areas, including areas around downtown Salt Lake City, or maybe in Alpine and Highland, and definitely up in Park City. There are so many other areas to explore and take advantage of. Regardless of where you want to live, you can be usually within 15 to 45 minutes from the city and find a lot of different options that aren't the most expensive areas. And regardless of where you choose to live in Utah, it's crucial that you have a professional real estate agent on your side, and that's why I have my team. You can go to my website to meet the team. I've got 4 agents plus myself that we serve my clients in every regard through the entire process, to make sure that you're being guided with an exceptional level of service, and to make sure that we make that move as smooth as possible and really dial that in specific to your needs and your concerns. All right, next up, I want to talk about the culture here in Utah that is centered around community and, of course, the outdoors. People here in Utah love the outdoors. They love to take advantage of the outdoor opportunities, of nature, and all the things that come with that. So you might have a job at an office, and on a powder day in the wintertime, you'll notice that a lot of people are bouncing and heading up to the ski slopes slopes to take advantage of the fresh powder day. Regardless, the outdoors is a crucial component to our lifestyle here. And for me personally, when I look out my window right here in my office and I see those beautiful Wasatch Mountains, to me, it just speaks that this is mental health. If you need a reprieve from the daily grind or the mundane, all you have to do is make it a point to get up in those mountains and go explore nature and the outdoors. And the next part of that is the community itself. So Utah is very much a community-based place to live. And that doesn't mean that you have to be from Utah to feel that same sense of community. In fact, the neighborhood where I live, the vast majority of the people that live there aren't from Utah. And it's created one of the most tight-knit communities in the state. And it's because we have a common denominator that is because we all live in the same neighborhood, and because of the events and the amenities that are offered, we really get to connect at a different level. So the sense of community in Utah is so much stronger than most other states. And I get a lot of feedback from people that have made the move here, and it's something that's really important to them, and they do notice it. But on the flip side of that, I do have some people that come here that never really truly feel like they find themselves fitting in to the community or being integrated into it. And I do believe that this honestly does boil down to personality. For example, if you're really introverted and you really don't step outside of your comfort zone to make new relationships, you might struggle. But I think the same could be said regardless of where you choose to move. Ultimately, if you choose to go find your people here in Utah, you will find them. We have a really good, strong sense of community here, and you won't be left out if you choose not to be. All right, next up, I want to talk about the big thing that people want to know when making the move to Utah, and that's politics. And that's how are you going to fit in? And when I scour my YouTube comments on every video of my YouTube channel, and I respond to each and every one of those, whenever there's a local that's commenting about people that are outsiders moving in, it inevitably boils down to the fact that people here in Utah do not want people moving here that are going to vote differently or try to change what Utah is. And that boils down to politics, that boils down to the fact that we are a more conservative state here. And for people who do live here, they don't want to see Utah change. They don't want to see Utah become California, for example. That same sentiment is not only here in Utah, but it's in other states like Idaho and Montana and Wyoming as well. Regardless, if you're moving to the Intermountain West, specifically Utah, we here as Utahns want to make sure that we preserve what Utah really is and why it's such an amazing place to live. And it comes down to values. And those values are reflected throughout our communities, throughout our schools, and also our taxes. We do have lower property taxes and income taxes than many of the states that people are choosing to move from. So the overarching theme of what I'm saying here is, if you're wanting what Utah offers, come and keep it what it is, because Utah is a beautiful place to live. For me personally, I love connecting with people that are making the move to Utah. And for that very reason, my team and I would love to be your real estate resource of choice. Reach out to me. You can find my contact information in the description below, or you can book a video call with me with that Calendly link that you'll find in the pinned comment on this and every video. And if you want to connect, I would love to have a conversation and see what we can do to really guide you in making the move to Utah. And if you're looking to learn more about life in Utah, check out this playlist next. And until next time, thanks.